There was something lost in all the excitement of Divinity's announcement, their AMA, and really just all the interviews and everything. Something that I don't think you may have noticed, or maybe you did, and that's just a really hook for this video. Something that wasn't the hints about swimming, or that they ditched the magic and physical armor systems. Yes, of course they upgraded to a new engine, and that's really cool. And yeah, they confirmed that their game is gonna be turn-based, of course. And even all the pervy lizard stuff. But there was one part about companions that I really wanted to talk about, because it really could be big. It could be something that actually changes a lot depending on how far Larian pushes, especially because it is Larian. And it all starts with this little quote from senior writer Kevin Van Ord in response to an AMA question about what they want to do better in Divinity, specifically with companions, acknowledging that at times companion-to-companion interactions outside of banter and a few cinematics was something lacking in prior games, saying, quote, "Companion relationships. Firstly, to have more interaction between companions. Not just with more and better banter, but to have them develop deeper relationships with each other, just as they do with players. Secondly, to ramp up player friendship and romance more subtly, so relationship building feels natural." You're getting a 2-for-1 for the quote here, but this was really heartening to see because throughout Baldur's Gate 3, for example, the companions feel more often than not like satellites around your Tav, your main character. They each do have their very own compelling narratives, and the companions do react to those narratives, but it's more like one-off lines here and there. They don't seem to truly change in their understanding or interactions. Those changes are based around you. They're not really connecting to each other, and they certainly don't have agency. You are the ultimate arbiter of their fates, or in some cases, your dice rolls.
You're wasting your time and mine. The answer is no.
They stand in their own little tents, never interacting, siloed away until their preset path comes about. It would have been fascinating to see Will become friends with Asterion in one playthrough, or bitter enemies in another. Not through direct player action, but through their own agency. It'd add more dimension, like taking the preset scenes from Shadowheart and Lae'zel, but adding Larian's ability to branch out to them. Little decisions that can influence things down the line. Perhaps leaving 2 party members in a camp alone together for too many cycles leads to one outcome or another, for example. If you back up even further to Divinity Original Sin 2 and to Divinity Original Sin, it's even worse. There's less interaction, it's less organic, and of course there's less cinematics, and there's not even like the whole camping system that Baldur's Gate 3 brought in. Companions feel a lot more like strangers than the party or the found family you'd expect in your favorite fantasy novel or series. But don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here advocating for all of your companions to start having butterflies for each other, budding romances the way that, say, Veilguard did, for example, with the non-chosen romance companions finding love in the arms of each other. As long as you help them out with what to say to each other in, kind of a friends type of way. It's very sitcom-y. Though, of course, that is something that makes sense to put into a game like this, without the sitcom part, perhaps. And I think that would be welcome in a game like Divinity, in a Larian game, especially after Baldur's Gate 3 and the entire fan base that they have expanded, in large part because of their expansive options that they brought forth with their companion systems and the bears, the bear scene. But there's another side to it. There's another less warm, cozy, cuddly, gentle side to it. A less loving side to it. More maybe stabbing in the back side. It's actually something that's talked about a little bit. Again, in the AMA. On the second subject in Kevin's quote, writing director Adam Smith had a longer, more expansive quote about romances in response to a question asking about romances in Divinity and if we should expect the same quality as Baldur's Gate 3. Adam said, quote, When we're designing and writing the romances, the goal is to make them memorable and to make them feel like a natural part of a character's personality and their relationship with the player. That means we discover the way to tell the romances as we develop to the companions and their stories, alongside character artists, cinematic artists, animators, performance directors, actors, and other developers. I hope we'll manage to push deeper into the depth and complexity of romance, love, and some other, not always positive, emotions. And I'm very excited to see what our cinematics team cooks up. This quote, combined with Kevin's about building relationships up more subtly, I think of creating a diverse, well-rounded experience with your companions. But I clung to one particularly interesting part of what Adam here said. One little section here. Something that could be something, or it could be absolutely nothing. Not always positive emotions. Certainly in Baldur's Gate 3, there are some especially not positive emotions, some somewhat toxic emotions that may be popular with a subset of people that played the game and went certain romance routes with a certain silver-haired vampire in a certain way. But you know, hey, to each their own. But there's other ways that things could go, especially when we back up to some of those other things that they're talking about with deeper interactions between the companions and deeper, more subtle interactions between the player character and your companions. There's a lot of room here for Larian to explore. It'll be interesting to see how deep and how wide they go. They dared to potentially kill one of your companions in Baldur's Gate 3. Well, two of them, technically. Could they add a betrayal, jealousy, companion-to-companion romances? When Larian risks killing your chosen romance companion in Act 3 of Baldur's Gate 3, players push back, so they change it to a lesser-used companion. What will they do with Divinity? Will they risk more? Will they be bolder? I don't know about you, but I kind of like the idea of being completely and utterly shocked by a companion betrayal late in the game. One that I'm not expecting, one that just kind of happens. I like that idea of that kind of like organic, like unexpected storytelling thing where the game doesn't feel as static with the companions. They don't feel as set as they might have otherwise because they often feel kind of safe. They feel very, very stuck. And so I like the idea of having a bit less safety around them. And so I'm holding on to that idea of some of those negative emotions. With Baldur's Gate 3, I tend to think Larian stepped forward in the genre as one of the biggest names in tertiary character building. I'd even argue that the character stories were more compelling than the main narrative of Baldur's Gate 3. The story of the Illithids pulled the narrative along, but it was the emotional weight of each companion's personal stories, some of which deeply intertwined with the main narrative, that really made the story compelling, at least to me. I'll put it this way, the time that I cried in this game didn't have shit to do with brainworms. It had everything to do with a personal character crying on a dock because they did everything right. And they still didn't get the happy ending, and that's, if you know, you know. And that is why this section, specifically coming from Larian, more than perhaps any other studio, makes me really excited to think of the possibilities. And for all I know, this could end up being a toss-aside answer. Maybe Larian decides this is not a route that we want to go down. This was, after all, just something they mentioned in an AMA. This is not a confirmed feature in Divinity. We don't really have many confirmed features in Divinity yet. It's still pretty far out. The only thing we know for sure really is that the armor system is not gonna be there and companions will be a thing. So that's what we got. But if they can do something like this, if they can add in companion interactions, these layers upon them that don't feel gimmicky in a way that I believe only Larian truly can, Giving these companions more agency, not just in relation to your player character, but to the companions themselves. Branching storylines hard set in the varying paths you make throughout the game that can expand upon what Larian has already managed to do extremely well. They'll add layers of replayability, storytelling depth, and compelling character development. We already know that Larian has a knack for taking one branch and then branching it and branching it and branching it. So I can only imagine what they could do if each one of their companions has branches upon branches upon branches of their own stories and where they could go. And those possibilities alone sound amazing to me. And if those possibilities aren't just basically binary, which is what they were in Baldur's Gate 3. Each companion basically had they went this way or this way, and the choice was up to you what happened. I would love to see more agency and more choices happen and those interactions happening within the companions themselves. So we'll see, but this is something that really, it got me excited. And again, could be absolutely freaking nothing, but I clung to this little part from the writers from Larian and the AMA. And so I wanted to just make a little video about it because I'm excited about it. And I wanted you to be excited about it too. And if it comes to nothing, we can all be disappointed together and cry together, and we'll just like wallow in self-pity and sorrow, and we can hug or something. My name is Red Flynn. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'll see you all again soon.